What Melkor is doing to be affecting Almoran directly, or do we want it to be taking place outside?
Well, that's what I was kind of looking for. Where in this concentric circle to start? Because if we start on the outside, that would make sense. That Almoran itself might not have frost yet, but the surrounding area maybe start to have a climate change episode.
Well, if Melkor has already started on Autumno, which I believe he has at this point.
Yes.
Then he's already started to freeze up the northern end of the continent of Middle Earth. So maybe the first person who should discover this issue is Ulmo.
Okay. Right. So we can, before we get frost on the flowers, which there shouldn't really be flowers anyway, but frost on the blades of grass. You're thinking of like frosted, like icebergs,
right? Yeah, where we just see him, plowing through the ocean. He's surveying his domain, whatever it is that he does with himself after the oceans have already been established, and he pops up and he's like, well, this is new. I don't remember putting any of this here.
So like glaciers and icebergs then, or like a polar ice cap, like how significant?
No, I don't feel like we're quite ready to go to that extreme yet. But maybe something coming close to the realm of like tundra. I mean, obviously not in the water, but like in the, like he can look over the land as well, and he can see that it looks kind of like the way that northern Canada looks in the, when it's not covered in snow and ice.
Okay, so a tundra landscape.
Right. The water, well, the ocean doesn't really freeze over unless it's like really, really,
unless it's like polar ice cap levels cold.
Right. Yeah.
That leaves us with icebergs that break off from glaciers.
Well, what if there's a frozen river emptying out into the ocean, and so there are chunks of ice, but like ice flows.
Right. Okay. So an ice flow.
Right. Okay. I feel like that's we're not quite at iceberg level yet, but we're there's ice floating out of the mouth of this river.
Okay, so a frozen river, tundra landscape, and Ulmo being like, where did this come from?
Right.
But it's not his territory, though. The land's not.
Right.
So he's gone, I wonder who did that. Like, he doesn't necessarily know that it's new, just like, where did this come from?
Yeah. And so he has to kind of go back to Almoran to check it out and to see, who's been messing around up here. Because it is affecting his domain, whether or not it actually is, whether or not it originates in his domain, it's affecting his domain. So he's got to deal with it in some way. Do we want to then have like the flip side of that? Because obviously, if it's starting to freeze up north, it's going to affect climate change worldwide.
Oh yes.
And so then we see a desert starting to form, maybe somewhere else in Middle Earth. Ivana discovers, her plants are dying inexplicably. There's no water in the ground.
Okay, so like a Mongolian steppe kind of situation where everything got really dry and exactly. Himalayan issue, but not the Himalayas.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so like rain shadow is where I was going with that.
Right.
But, okay, so we have different unique problems, but not necessarily like disasters.
It's not epic disaster level issues yet, yes.
Okay, so it's more like, wait a minute, this is weird, confusion, why is this changing, what's happening? Okay.
Now, it was hard for me to tell based on what they were saying, if they decided they did want to have some sort of impending disaster look like it's coming down on them, because remember, these stories are taking place over thousands of years. It would be nothing for the Valar to check back on this and then find there's this massive glacier that's now coming down off of them.
Right.
So maybe we find it almost finds it in its beginning stages, and then when they get back to look at it again, now we're full on Arctic, and it's becoming an issue.
Right. So over the course of this episode, we're going to see a ramping up of the effects.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm fine with the, hey, that would take thousands of years. That's okay. It took thousands of years in the story.
So what?
Yeah, exactly. So I am very much fine with just having things happen and letting the viewer figure out, oh, that usually takes a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like we're not quite there yet in the story. Because, I mean, otherwise, if there's not some kind of issue there, it's going to be a boring episode.
There's stuff that we can put in this episode that won't make it boring. But I agree that should be part of what gets put in it.
Yeah. Creed says, and the Valar have never made a world before, so they might not be super confident about what is exactly going on and how bad it might be. Yeah, I agree. This is to Ulmo an annoyance. It's not a disaster.
But for some of the other characters, they might be concerned that it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse forever and destroy the world.
Right.
So there can be varying reactions to this news, from to, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So who's going to panic? Yavanna would be the one who'd panic the most, because her stuff's the most fragile.
Yeah. I feel like
all is like, whatever, I can make mountains. I mean,
nothing has changed. It looks exactly the same to me. In a way, like the way he looks at it, it looks absolutely nothing has changed that's of any importance.
Right. So Ollie would be pretty much this is not a problem, guys, end of the spectrum. And Yavanna is at the complete opposite. This is an impending disaster. We must save the world.
Right. Her stuff is, as Krita says, her stuff is alive and not as long-lived. I agree.
It's fragile.
Yeah. So do we go back after we see both of them reacting to the change in the environment? Do we go back to Almarin and now we go to our first meeting at the council chamber in Almarin?
On that, we're gonna have throughout the first season here a zillion times where the Valar stand around and debating council.
Right. Yes.
This is gonna just keep happening.
Yeah.
But that's gonna get visually boring.
Yeah.
Quick. We're gonna destroy Almarin pretty soon, so we get to do something unique in Almarin and then destroy it and do something different in Valinor.
Yeah, because we're only 2 episodes away.
Right.
From the destruction of Almarin.
Right. So whatever we do with Valar and Council here should be unique, because here's our chance to do something different.
Well, I feel like what we can, because in Valinor, we're gonna have the Ring of Doom.
Right.
And it's like the imagery, and I don't know how much of this is in my own head and how much of this is in the actual description, but when I think of it, I think of them all seated around the Ring of Doom.
Yeah, no, it specifically says there's a throne for each of the Valar.
Right, okay, so yeah.
You're right.
So that's not in my imagination. Awesome. So I feel like we can avoid that, if nothing else.
Right. Because that's where we're going. We have to do something different now.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I agree with. Sorry, just a second. I agree with you, Karita, that Yavanna's not a drama queen. She's just raising a legitimate concern because her domain is affected more severely than the others.
Yes.
But sorry.
No. So I mean, if they are seated, it would make sense for it to be at more of a table, because they don't have to cast judgment on anybody who's standing in the middle at this point.
Right. So this is more of a round table discussion.
Right. this is more of a planning center than a judgment seat.
Okay.
And what would be really interesting to do is, because I mean, they're able to transmute matter, correct? So
Yes.
what would be kind of neat is if they could actually see Elmo can fill a water pitcher. Yes. But what I was actually thinking of was that the table could actually be able to see Arda in real time on the surface of the table.
Right. It becomes like Galadriel's mirror.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it could even be in like 3D,
Yeah, 3D model where it just grows up and looks like what it's supposed to look like. And they say, here's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should definitely do something with that to make, for one thing, the conversation much more visual.
Right. Exactly.
Be able to show what we're talking about.
Right.
And whether that's a scrying glass where they're looking at the real thing while they're not being there, or whether they're making it from their own knowledge.
Yeah. I feel like
it that's something to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. So their command center is like a tactical command center where you've got the map of the battlefield and moving on it.
Yes.
Not a judgment seat, which is appropriate. They're in world building stage. They need to look at the world they're building. Like this is what their focus would be.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Okay, so they're at the council table in Almarin. I'm sorry. All these like side things.
No. That's an important issue to get nailed down, because we're never going to have the opportunity to do this again. We're never going to be able to have the council chamber. We only have the council chamber in Almarin for this episode. The next episode, we have the arrival of Telkus. The next episode, we have the building of the lamps. I'd like a moment where Ale makes a stone rise up in the center of the ring to serve as a table. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that as well.
Yeah. We have this episode 4. We have episode 5. And then at the end of episode 6, Almarin gets destroyed.
Right. So
we've really got, so we've got episode 2 had Almarin, and then these 3 episodes in a row have it. Yeah. So Almarin is only on screen for 3 and a little bit episodes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like
they're working together at the council to make this image and all.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm seeing is they're working. They're doing it together. They're each contributing their knowledge of what's going on in Arda to the image that the others are seeing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So so Kurita's idea is that the table that moves up in the center is always contribution, and then Manwë is allowing everyone to see what's going on in some way, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So
at this first of many councils of the Valar, they're discussing the problems of Middle Earth.
Right. So so Yavanna is justifiably concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Omo is concerned, but he's more irritated. Like somebody's messing with his stuff again. Who's messing with his stuff now?
Yeah, he's more like, well, who's doing this? And everyone there denies it, and he's like, really, guys?
There's nobody else here.
Yeah, right. So Omo can sound very suspicious of the whole group, which when it turns out that they're right and he's wrong is going to make him look a little bit more. Yeah.
So who's going to... So the question is Melkor just going to come strolling down Main Street of his own accord, or does somebody find him?
Yeah, I was not clear on... Yeah, Omo would not be popular at meetings. He's the gruff, prickly guy who... Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten to Mandos yet, so that's gonna...
Yeah. And Omo's not usually there. Like, that's the whole point, is he only came to this meeting because he's got a beef with people. Yeah. He wouldn't be there otherwise.
Yeah, and that can be commented on. Like, where were you yesterday? Like...
Yeah. Where were you going?
I think Melkor shows up on his own. We get him dragged to judgment later. Yeah, I'd like to do that. I really would. I don't know.
he wants to be king of Arda.
Right. He wants to
Like,
be adored.
So if all the Valar have gathered in one place, he's just going to walk in like, I'm here now. Thank you for getting started. Let me show you what we're going to do next.
Right. And thank you, Chris. Yeah, he is a confident guy. He's a megalomaniac.
Yeah. So this is where I have to ask a question that is annoying. So just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unusual in situations like this to make references to real life politics.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
I think I know where you're going.
You know exactly where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we don't want to be like Melkor is Hitler, because he's not.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But, is he going to say or do anything that makes him look like, say, Trump? I mean, I don't want him to. I think that the less I see or hear of that man, the better. But do we want to go there? The answer can be no. The answer can totally be no. But
I don't feel that we need to evoke any person in particular, because I feel like people are.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
Rita says that Melkor is sexier, and I totally agree.
How the man's old? He's not. Nobody has any illusions about that. Anyway, so I feel like
Melkor should be good looking. We've established.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But lots of personal charisma and good looks.
People are going to make the connections to the people they want to make connections to.
Agreed. I mean, everyone thought Emperor Palpatine was like actually George W. Bush when the prequels of Star Wars came out. Yeah. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that this is you deciding that George W. Bush is Palpatine.
Is Emperor Palpatine. Exactly. And that's kind of the way things are going to go. I mean, if you look at what people were saying when The Lord of the Rings came out immediately, like 10 years after World War II ended, people were making connections there where Tolkien clearly did not intend any connections to World War II. Cheekbones for days. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a Kylo Ren man.
Okay. So Melkor comes marching into town with or without minions.
Oh, okay. With.
So
because yeah, sorry. I think that he is confident, but remember he got kind of denied and rejected during the music. Yeah. Like he didn't come out on top and win then. Yeah. So he needs to kind of come in from a position of power, and he sort of feels like he needs to prove himself with these people.
Yeah, and Karita says he has to have a posse because all rock stars have a posse. Yes.
Right. That helps feed his confidence level. So I think he needs them, and they would be with him. Like where else would they be, right?
So he big and rich parades into Almoran. I'm substituting rock stars with country rock stars, but so he comes marching down into the city. So if he does that, he's going to get confronted at some point. Whether it's by Varda or almost, somebody is going to be like, I don't remember you coming along. When did you get here?
Right. The when did you get here thing is going to be kind of significant because the Valar who came together. Yeah, like they've worked to become a group now, and he was not part of the group that formed, so he's an outsider.
So does he come in?
And not necessarily.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Does he come in?
Oh, I just said he's not necessarily welcome. But go ahead.
Does he come in during this council meeting?
Yes, anything to interrupt the council meeting and
Yeah.
the talk.